Thanks. Wisdom and stories are very powerful ways to communicate. I had the opportunity to spend a couple of years living out in the African savannah, and I think that leads me to two problems or challenges that technology can help us solve. We're told by evolutionary psychologists that we lived most of our human existence in areas like the African savannah, where Richard Leakey is discovering our earliest ancestors, not that long ago in geologic history. And we really lived the vast majority until very recently of our human existence under those kinds of conditions where the effects of causes were very immediate. And you mentioned something, you called it feedback. Now we live in a world that's very abstract, and feedback loops are very distant. If you smoke today, you may get cancer 20 years down the time track. There are all kinds of causes to which effects are very, very abstract. And I think one of the challenges for technology is to begin to, as you said, manifest the feedback in ways that we can process it and understand it. Because the consequences of our actions are very abstract today. So technology, I think, can help close those feedback loops to a great degree. Then the other thing is you were talking about taking action. And in today's world, we know that individual actions are very powerful. Aggregated, they become very, very powerful. And one of the things that I experience working with people today is they don't experience the effect of individual actions very directly. And so another challenge for technology is to enable us to aggregate the effects or the consequences of our actions, our individual actions, so that individual action as well as collective action begins to become very powerful.
I don't know how many of you have heard the name Saul Alinsky. Just for curiosity, could I see a show of hands of how many of you are familiar with him? I would really encourage you, if you want to understand Barack Obama and where his amazing community organizing skill came from, to study the life and work of Saul Alinsky, who was a community organizer in Chicago and was Barack Obama. In fact, Saul Alinsky was a mentor for almost all of us who were in what was called the movement against the war in Vietnam, the movement for women's rights, the movement for the Poor People's March on Washington. Saul Alinsky was one of the leaders, and these techniques of taking individual action and making it into collective action with the feedback loops that we're discussing and ways to change society, the community around Saul Alinsky practiced that. And you see how well this election campaign was managed by Obama, and it bears the hallmarks of Saul Alinsky. The other person I would like to invite your attention to is a fellow named Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. He actually served as the #2 to Trygve Lie, Dag Hammarskjöld, and most importantly, U Thant, the 3 first Secretary Generals of the UN. And in those days, the Secretary General of the UN was not just a manager, he or she was the wisest of the wise. And Robert Mueller wrote several books. #1, he wrote a book called Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness, which is a series of articles about the Secretaries General that he worked with. The other was a Copernican view of human consciousness, which is his study of the history of human consciousness and the movements that propelled society lurching forward from the very beginning of collectivism. So those are 2 people whose work I found extraordinarily helpful, and I recommend them to you.
I feel like the guy at the football game, and there's this hot dog going back and forth, and I'm going to take a bite out of it. Just one observation to make about movements and organization and the like. The campaign was pretty impressive in terms of the speed with which and the scope with which people were moved to register to vote and to pay attention to issues and the like. But I must confess to you that I hope that we do not have to live through another 2 years of the intensity of 1-866 unknown caller ringing every 5 minutes in order to get something to happen. I don't think I could. That will turn everybody the wrong way. It's the wrong set of incentives. So we got to find ways to do this that are effective, but not so annoying that they turn people off. Okay, who's next?
Could I?
You have your own microphone.
I know, but can I jump in? Just
questions or comments?
well, just a few thoughts, because I think it's really clear that conversation isn't enough, and I think it's also clear that we need to also learn how to talk, because when was the last time you talked to somebody who significantly disagreed with you on something?
All the time.
Well, that's great. I think a lot of us, we don't do it because it's difficult. We have these things we say, don't talk about politics, right? Because of the contention that it can create. So there's a skill set that needs to be learned. And then I was thinking, too, that Google recently, I think actually still in the midst of this Project 10 to the 100th. And does everyone know about that? I just assume you all know exactly everything your company is doing, right? I mean,
party celebration.
Yeah, well, and you're soliciting ideas from people, really, I guess, all over the world about how can we make the world a better place, and then Google is going to put $10 million behind the best ideas. And it is the most brilliant coming together of conversation to generate these ideas plugged into a system that where you know your idea may not be accepted, but you know you're contributing to the creativity, and you know that it's going someplace, in this case to a company that knows how to get something done. And that to me is a beautiful system and a beautiful model. And I just say, I mean, I know from what I've read anyway, I think I know this, Google is really interested in social networking. Well, I think there is a brilliant recipe for the most awesome social networking site on the planet. You would get people all over the world plugged into that system in a way you just wouldn't believe. And right now, you know, you don't collect their names or their, I don't think you do. But on our website, somebody started up a conversation specifically to generate ideas for the Google Project 10 to the 100. So if you take a company like Google, and it's not the only one, there are others that have the ingenuity, actually there are not that many others really, that have the ingenuity, the vision, the culture, the altruistic urge that just seems to be here. If you take that kind of a company that knows how to get things done, that has influence, you can help aggregate these actions that we talk about.
I have to react to
this. Go,
Can
please.
I react to this?
Please.
Okay, so 3 words: prizes, patience, persistence. Prizes are not enough. They may be good for stimulating thought. They may be good for maybe getting some things started. But sometimes you have to have long-term support to make something happen. You need to be persistent about things. Sometimes you need to be patient about things. And so I worry about the prize syndrome somehow overtaking the recognition that getting things done can sometimes take a long time, require an awful lot of conversation and persuasion and everything else. It took 10 years to get from the ideas behind the internet to the time we rolled it out in 1983. It took 10 years to get from the start of the interplanetary internet program to literally the last 2 weeks of getting the interplanetary protocols in use on an interplanetary basis. So sometimes you have to be persistent. Sometimes you have to find long-term support to make things happen. Prizes don't do that. They kick things off and they stimulate thought. But there's more to this. There's that, just like that iceberg. There's more to it than the idea at the top.
Well, just real quick, because I'm not talking about prizes. I think there's so many ways that influence can be affected. That doesn't require money. I mean, just knowing that your ideas are going to go someplace where they will have an influence. And I think about, I mean, I think a lot of people have read the Team of Rivals book about Lincoln and how he was always very careful not to get ahead of his constituency, because if he knew he got too far ahead of his constituency, he would lose his support. So that long-term business is essential. That how can we make sure, just looking at our own country, not necessarily the whole world, how can we make sure we're having the kind of conversations we need, getting educated in the way we need to be to support, right, the initiatives that we know he would like to take?